Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hey, friends. Hey, welcome to the Stitch Please podcast. And as I say every week, this is a very special episode because this episode, I am going to take y'all through part one of understanding commercial patterns from the outside looking in, or from the inside out. It really is about understanding that commercial pattern, looking at the envelope, and then opening that envelope and looking at the guide sheet. We're going to do this in 2 episodes because there is a lot to cover and I don't want to have an episode that's 90,000 years long. So I am going to begin by taking you through a pattern that I am working on right now, which is Brittany J. Jones's pattern for Know Me. It's a lovely romper, and we're going to look at that envelope as a way to understand all of the commercial envelopes in the Big 5 patterns, as well as for the independents, because they also use these same elements in their patterns. So if you have been confused about commercial patterns, you don't like to work with them, listen to these episodes and see if I can offer you some information or some guidance that'll make them a lot easier to understand. And maybe, just maybe, you'll give them a try to see if they can work for you too. I think sewing is about liberation. Sewing is a process that allows you to put the means of creation into your own hands. Patterns are an example of something that you can use to do that too. I also love noting that in other countries around the world, especially on the continent, I have talked with dressmakers and designers in Ghana, in Senegal, in other places, in Nigeria as well. They do not use commercial patterns like we do in the United States. So you do not need a commercial pattern to sew anything. However, if you would like to get a particular look, if you would like to reduce the learning of drafting, etc., you can start with a commercial pattern. And that is what we're going to talk about today. The pattern that I'm using, as I said before, is Brittany J. Jones's Know Me pattern. If you want to follow along with us at home, the pattern number we're going to be talking about today and for next week's episode is ME2063. That is the pattern number. We're going to begin by looking at the envelope. We'll look at the front of the envelope, and then we'll flip it over to the back and talk about all of those things you see on the back of a pattern envelope. Let's begin with the front of the envelope. This is a Know Me pattern. I have the lovely Brittany J. Jones's phone number. Lord, I don't have the girl's phone number. Maybe I do. Listen, I'm very fortunate to know quite a few wonderful people in the sewing community. And I don't think I have Brittany J. Jones's phone number, but we've talked and she's awesome. Anywho, you see Brittany's lovely photograph. And this is one of the innovations that I believe Mimi G has brought to the Big 5 through her work, I think, as a vice president. She has brought in Know Me patterns, which feature a lot of designers from the community, from the sewing community. And a lot of these are Black and brown folks. And one of them is Brittany J. Jones. And this is who we're talking about today. Brittany has made a really delightful romper for spring 2024. Because it is also a pair of shorts as well as a pair of pants, it's good for the summer. And I am thinking about this for early summer. So looking at Brittany J. Jones's pattern, ME2063, the first thing you'll notice in the upper left corner is that there is an R number in the pattern. Her R pattern number is R12046. The R numbers are something I believe we as sewists can ignore. These numbers seem to be rack numbers, the numbers for patterns that they put on display at the top of the pattern cabinet. It does not have any relationship, as far as I can tell, to the real pattern number, which is a 4-digit number. The R numbers, I believe, are for tracking sales and it doesn't do anything, in my opinion, but confuse us. Because if you're archiving your patterns, as I do in a database, I already have them under a series of 4 numbers. Many folks I have read looking at blogs and other conversations simply ignore the R number and use the tried and true 4-digit number. And I am going to do the same. When you look at the pattern, you will see that it'll say ME, which is the abbreviation for know me, and then the pattern number. The same thing happens in the other patterns as well. B for Butterick, S for Simplicity, M for McCall's, it's V for Vogue. So this is a standard that has been going on for many, many years. And it's just a way for the pattern company to know where the pattern will fit in its overall catalog. You also see at the front of the pattern 2 different views. View A is the shorts. View B is the long pants. This is important because when you look at the envelope, you get to understand how much you can make from one pattern. There are some patterns that have separates, and you can make 5 different garments from just one pattern. Those are the different views that you can make. In addition, what has also been innovated through Know Me and through Simplicity, I believe through Mimi G as well, is the sew along tutorial. There is a QR code on the front of this pattern that you can follow along with to sew it. So it gives you some kind of companionship as you are sewing, and that is pretty fun. All of this is on the front of the pattern envelope. We're also going to turn right now and take a pause and look at the flap of the pattern envelope. This is another thing that will tell you what you need to know. It has the name of the company. It has the rack price, which is the printed price that very few people in the US pay because we are very accustomed to getting our patterns at 50% off as the standard, or 40% off as the standard. Or many of us wait for sales because the printed price on the sewing pattern is exponentially more expensive and for some prohibitive to purchase. So this pattern retails for $15.95, though I have not known anybody to pay that. I have never paid envelope price for a pattern in over 20 years of sewing. You get to also know when the design was copywritten, when the pattern was copywritten. I really enjoy having, because I'm a nerd, y'all. Y'all know I'm a nerd. I want to know when it was printed. This was published in 2024. I like knowing this because it helps me to understand where in the history of my sewing practice, where it helps me know when I bought the pattern, how long I've had the pattern. Y'all, I got some patterns that I have that are older than my children. I got some patterns that are older than me. So, and I know that because of the copyright date, and that's pretty fun. You also get to learn that this is from a design group that's now based in Atlanta, Georgia. There's the website for the design group is on there, as well as as well as the website for the pattern company. So it also tells you that this pattern is not to be used for commercial or manufacturing purposes. It is for home sewing only. I think they do this not because they don't want small businesses to make garments from these patterns. I think it's because they're trying to protect themselves from corporations or fashion companies, perhaps. I don't know. But it says it's meant to be used for individual, private home use only. This is something to keep in mind. And if you have questions about it, y'all better consult a lawyer. Or check out somebody else, because your girl don't know. But that I'm only telling you what I think. And that is, these are all opinions that I am sharing with you today. So we understand what's happening on the front of the pattern. It lists the size. These sizes are in groupings, AA, BB, CC. I have the size AA grouping, which goes from a size 10 to a size 18. I believe myself to be outside of this particular size range. And you might say, Lisa, why are you buying a pattern that's too small? Because I know it's not too small, because there is something on the back of the pattern envelope, which we will get into next, that will tell me why I believe this size 18 will fit me very well, and the size that I am slated for in the pattern instructions would be too big. Let's move on. Let's go ahead and turn over this pattern envelope. And what you'll do is then when you turn it over, it goes from a vertical orientation to a horizontal orientation. So imagine it like, it looks like an IG story or a TikTok video, which is the kind of the vertical video. And then it flips to the horizontal, which is more like a YouTube video. This gives you a lot of great details. The first thing you'll notice is that there are two sets of directions in two different languages. The one on the left is in English and the one on the right is in French. This gives folks who are sewing, not just in France, but in other European countries, the measurements in the metric system. It has the pattern information, the measurements for the bust and the body, the finished garment measurements, all rendered in the metric system, which is important when you are buying fabric by the meter versus by the yard. All of these are ways to expand the accessibility of the pattern. I have also noticed that, well, we'll talk about this next time, but I've also noticed that in some guide sheets that are inside the patterns, they also have dual languages. They'll have it in English and Spanish, English and French. What I have not seen is the pattern instructions like this with Spanish on the other side. And so I'm wondering if there is a version that is also in Spanish. The careful read of the pattern envelope will let you know what you are getting into before you even start. Before you even open the pattern to look inside, it will tell you all you need to know on the outside. You can decide, do you want to be bothered or not, if you look at the pattern envelope. This pattern envelope is telling us that this is an average pattern. This is based on the skills of the sewist. If you believe your skills to be average, not beginner, not advanced, but average, these are the three levels. They have beginner, they have average, and then they have expert or advanced. An average pattern will require you to have a certain set of skills. You should probably be comfortable with installing zippers, in doing closures, knowing how to lay fabric out. There's certain things that it's going to ask you to do that a beginner, someone who is brand new, might not yet know how to do. You can also be a brave beginner or a fearless beginner and just try patterns at any level. This is just the pattern company trying to set expectations. So it really is up to you if you think that you are a beginner, if you are an average level, or if you are advanced. It also explains what the garment is. This is called a Mrs. and Women's Romper and Jumpsuit. This is explaining that this is for adults. And Mrs., I believe, is for what they call straight sizes, and women's is for what they call curvy sizes. Mrs. tend to be in the smaller range or lower numbers, like from 10 to 18 or 6 to 18, and the women's sizes tend to begin at around 20. The next thing the pattern will tell you is the suggested fabrics. Now, for this one, it's saying I would like a chambray, a cotton blend, or a linen blend. It's also saying that I would need some lightweight fusible interfacing. I love being told what my suggested fabrics are because it lets me set up in my mind what I'm going to use. The clearest thing that is being said here in suggested fabrics is, are you using a woven fabric or a knit fabric? Chambray, cotton blends, and linen blends are woven fabrics. That's letting us know that, yes, you can use these things. You can use chambray, cotton blends, and linen blends, but you could probably also use things like rayon blends. You could use silks. You could use some different satins. You could use satines. You want something clearly that's going to be drapey, but also rather sturdy. What you are not going to want to use is a spandex, a cotton lycra, anything that has a lot of stretch, because it will not behave in the way that the garment is designed to behave. Hey friends, hey, it's Lisa Woolfork from the award-winning Stitch Please podcast, and I need you to help me get my stitch together. We're celebrating 5 years of the podcast with Stitch Better Have My Money, a $50,000 capacity building fundraiser. We've had a great 5 years threading the needle of limited resources. But with your support, we can stitch a brighter future. Visit stitchbetterhavemymoney.org to donate today. Donations are tax deductible. And thank you. Hey friends, hey, I know you're enjoying the audio version of Stitch Please, and thanks so much for listening. But you're missing out on all the great stuff going on behind the scenes. That's why I'm inviting you to join our Black Women Stitch Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can see all the video versions of the podcast. Plus, you get some amazing swatch cards. You know how much I love these swatch cards. Look, see how cool these are? Oh wait, you can't see them because you are not yet on the Patreon. So when you join the Patreon, you'll be able to see this, me showing you these amazing cards. We also have some great perks at the other tiers, like discounts, swag, office hours, and more. Don't be the last sewist in the group now. Head over to patreon.com/blackwomenstitch or click the link in the show notes and become a Patreon supporter today. We truly cannot do this without you. So thank you so much. After you get the suggested fabrics, they'll tell you what notions you need. And you'll see on the pattern that this is going to be divided into the views. Remember, there's 2 views in Brittany's pattern, the shorts and the pants. This notions is saying that for both view A and view B, you need the same notions. It sometimes happens that you're looking at a pattern and view A will need something that view B or C does not need. So just look here to see what they're asking of you. They're saying, okay, I need a 9-inch zipper, I need 2 buttons, and I need 3/8 yard of 3/8 inch wide elastic. So pretty simple. You need zippers, a couple buttons, and some elastic. These are the extra things you will need to have in addition to sewing machine, needle thread, scissors, etc. It also breaks down the sizes into both the American way, which is our numbering system that we have, and the European system, which I believe is more based on waist measurements. So the European size 36 corresponds to a size 10 in US. And so this is very easy to do. You just look at the sizes, you read across the graph from left to right, and it will help you move down the columns of the entire pattern. Let me say that again. When you look at the sizes of the pattern and you choose your size, you choose it and then you read the column from the top to the bottom, because everything you need for your size, after you've talked about the sizes, your body measurements, the pattern, the views that you want to make, as well as the finished garment measurements, all of these things correspond to the sizes. So for example, what I'm going to do now is take you through the size 18 that I am going to make, and I will tell you how this is going to work for me. And you can also think about how it might work for you. Body measurements are really important. They are telling you to select your pattern size based on your body measurements. Something that I like to do sometimes is to even circle on the pattern envelope itself what the body measurements are, knowing what my measurements are because I skip across different patterns. My bust is in one size, my waist is in another size, my hip is in another size. Now I can do that and follow this down the path. So I'm looking at the bust for a size 18 is a 40, which is, I think, close to mine. The waist for an 18 is a 32, not my waist size. My waist size is much closer to the 37. And my hip is also closer to the size 22 measurement. Now, stay with me. I am not trying to fit into a pattern that is not going to work for me, but I'm going to let you know why I bought this 18. This is because of the way that the finished garment looks. It also gives you the measurements of what your hip should be in order to fit in the pattern that you want, as well as your back neck to waist measurement. I do not understand why they include this back neck to waist measurement. I just don't understand it. I think that there's other ones that are kind of more important, but the back to neck, not so interesting. Then after you decide your pattern size, the pattern will tell you how much fabric to get. Y'all, please pay attention to this. I know we like doing fabric Tetris, but you really need to lay out your pattern in the way that the guide sheet is telling you. This is because there are certain grain lines and elements of the fabric that are meant to correspond with how the pattern pieces themselves are laid out. This is why when you look at the section where it says what fabric section you need, so after we've done the measurements, there's the interfacing that follows, and then romper A and jumpsuit B. These are the 2 different views of the pattern. It's important to pay attention to fabric selection as well. And this is what you see on the middle part of the pattern envelope. It'll tell you how much fabric you need for different views or for different garments. It divides this fabric into 2 types. a 45-inch width of fabric or a 60-inch width of fabric. When you look at this number, you will see an asterisk next to the required fabric amounts. And when you look down, it'll say with nap or without nap. With nap means that your fabric must be laid out in a particular direction. If you buy fabric that has zebras and they're all standing in a field of grass, you do not want to cut your fabric so that the zebras are standing sideways or upside down. You want to make sure that your fabric has the same orientation. Otherwise, it's not going to look right. This is especially true for velvets and textured fabrics. You will get different color striations if you do not lay your fabric in the right direction. It will look like the light is hitting it. It will look jacked up for real in ways that you will not be able to fix if you cut your fabric against the nap. So this is why it's important to buy the amount that they're suggesting so you have enough room to lay things out. You also know that if you are buying 45-inch width fabric, you will have to buy more of it than you will a 60-inch or 58-inch or sometimes 55-inch wide fabric. So that is something to keep in mind. The last two things I want us to discuss before we wrap up today is finished garment measurements and the line drawing. I want to spend some time talking about why the line drawing is important, as well as the finished garment measurement. Finished garment measurements are something, again, I believe that Mimi G has innovated for the Big Five. They didn't often include finished garment measurements, or the parts that they included were ridiculous, like so you would know how long it was from the base of your neck to your waist. What I really need to know is how big the hips are, and can my hips fit inside the hip measurements they are anticipating for the final garment. They have already made these garments, right? They have already designed these garments. They know what the finished measurements are. And this is why I believe it's important to have these things here, and why I am grateful Know Me Patterns always includes this. If you're making views A and B, the bust for your pattern size will be included. So I'm usually wear like maybe I might make a 22, but because of the finished garment size, there is so much ease, so much design and wearing ease in this romper that I believe I will make a size that is smaller and it will still fit well. The waist for the size that I need, that I'm making, is very close to the waist size that I currently have. The hips will fit nicely based on what I'm seeing, but not be too big. They also talk about the width of each pant leg. They're 32 inches wide for my size, as well as the finished back length, which, again, I do not need this information to know that from the back of the garment to the heel of my foot is 60 inches. Like, that is not useful information. I am especially grateful, and the most important part for me is the bust, waist, and hip measurements in the finished garment measurements section. That tells you if this is going to fit over your actual body. If you know what your hip size is, and you pick up this Know Me pattern, and you scroll down to finished garment measurements, you can find your hip size and say, okay, so this is my size. Okay, I think, yeah. I don't think I need to have this be 10 inches bigger than my actual hip size. Let me go down and do this smaller size that will also give me the look that I know that I like. So this is why it's important to have or pay attention to the finished garment measurements, because it will save you a lot of heartache in the end. I want to conclude this episode today talking about the line drawings. I believe that the line drawing is one of the most important elements of a sewing pattern. The line drawing is really important because the line drawing is the blueprint of a garment. And I have read when doing some research for this episode is that line drawings are considered a universal language. They're the blueprint of the garment. They offer a clear and detailed visual guide that strips away distractions like fabric patterns and textures to focus solely on the garment itself. It's kind of like a rental apartment where they make it kind of bland so that you can imagine yourself and your stuff in there. This is what a line drawing is. It can also tell you so many things about the garment. It'll tell you if it has pockets. It'll tell you if the fabric is gathered or drapey. It will tell you if there's a belt or not. It will tell you if it's a one-piece back or a two-piece back. It will tell you if the sleeves are cut on or if the sleeves are inserted or stitched. All of this is the type of information that you will get from the line drawing. I really appreciate that the line drawings, even though they're very small, they are very detailed. They include the front of the garment as well as the back. I like how they are sketches that allow you to cast your imagination of what it might look like on you, what it might look like with the fabric that you have chosen, but it lets you see the things you need to see. Is there darts or is it gathered? Is it deliberate ruching? Are the pockets inset? Are the pockets welt? Are the pockets just, regular cut on pockets? All the different elements of the garment are displayed clearly and effectively in the line drawing. It will tell you so much. If you start with the line drawing, it's a good way to know if this pattern will be suitable for you. Do you like patterns that have fluffy sleeves? Do you like wide leg pants that have a nice drape to them? This is what the line drawing is telling me about the pattern that we've been talking about today. So just to wrap up, we've been talking today about understanding commercial patterns. This is the part 1 of 2-part episode on understanding commercial patterns, because the first thing you see on a commercial pattern is the outside. You see the envelope. So it is worth paying attention to the pattern envelope. And that's what we were able to do today. I hope you understand a little bit more about sewing patterns and how to choose your size. And in the case of Know Me Patterns and some of the other simplicities I've noticed, you can follow along with the QR code that is included right there on the envelope. I hope you also know how to read for your size using the finished garment measurements. And you've learned a little bit about how a line drawing can help you decide whether you want to make a pattern or not. Now, come back next time. We're going to jump into the pattern itself. We're going to read through this guide sheet and understand those sections and how you can use a commercial pattern, understand the things they're asking you to do inside, and how you can use a commercial pattern more effectively to make your sewing, fun. As I said, my goal, I want to keep the sewing going. I want you to have a good time, and understanding commercial patterns can be a part of that process. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Come back so you can hear about how we're going to work this guide sheet. All right, see you next time. You've been listening to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week for stories that center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We invite you to join the Black Women Stitch Patreon community with giving levels beginning at $5 a month. Your contributions help us bring the Stitch Please podcast to you every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.